Elena's eyes fluttered open to unfamiliar silk sheets that felt like liquid against her skin. The room around her was nothing like her tiny studio apartment. Marble floors gleamed under the soft morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Crystal chandeliers hung from an ornate ceiling painted with classical scenes that seemed to watch her every move. Her head throbbed with the intensity of a jackhammer. The last thing she remembered was celebrating her 25th birthday at Rosie's bar downtown with her best friend, Maya. They had been drinking cheap wine and laughing about Elena's disastrous job interview earlier that day. Everything after midnight was a complete blur, lost in a haze of alcohol and regret. Elena sat up slowly, her hand instinctively moving to her temple. She was wearing a silk nightgown she had never seen before, emerald green with delicate lace trim that must have cost more than her monthly rent. Panic began to creep up her spine like ice-cold fingers. This wasn't her clothes, this wasn't her bed, and this definitely wasn't her life. The bedroom was massive, larger than her entire apartment. Expensive artwork covered the walls, and fresh white roses filled crystal vases on every surface. The scent was intoxicating, but somehow made her feel more trapped. A massive mahogany dresser stood against one wall, its surface covered with items that clearly belonged to a man: an expensive watch, gold cufflinks, and what looked like a gun holster. Elena's heart began racing as she noticed the holster. Where exactly was she? She tried to piece together the events of the previous night, but her memory was frustratingly blank. Had someone drugged her drink? The possibility made her stomach turn with nausea and fear. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, testing her stability. Her legs felt weak, but she managed to stand. The marble floor was cold against her bare feet as she moved toward what she hoped was a door. She needed to find her clothes and get out of this place immediately. Just as she reached for the ornate door handle, it turned from the outside. Elena's breath caught in her throat as a man entered the room. He was tall and imposing, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair perfectly styled and piercing gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. He wore an expensive black suit that fit him like it was made specifically for his broad shoulders and lean frame. The man's presence filled the entire room with an energy that made Elena's skin tingle with both fear and something else she couldn't quite identify. He moved with the confidence of someone who owned not just this house, but probably everything and everyone in it. His eyes swept over her from head to toe, taking in her disheveled appearance and obvious confusion. "Good morning, Elena," he said, his voice deep and smooth like aged whiskey. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. How did he know who she was? She was certain she had never seen this man before in her life. Yet something about him felt familiar in a way that frightened her. Elena opened her mouth to demand answers, to ask where she was and how she got here, but no words came out. She felt like a deer caught in headlights, frozen under his intense gaze. The man smiled then, but it wasn't a warm or comforting expression. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. "I see you're confused," he continued, moving closer with slow, deliberate steps. "That's understandable. Last night was quite eventful, though I suspect you don't remember much of it." He paused in front of a leather chair and casually removed his suit jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt that emphasized his muscular build. Elena finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Who are you? Where am I? I need to go home." The words tumbled out in a rush, her desperation clear in every syllable. The man's smile widened, showing perfectly white teeth. "Home?" he repeated, as if the word amused him. "This is your home now, Elena. As for who I am, you can call me Vincent." Vincent Moretti. The name meant nothing to Elena, but the way he said it suggested she should recognize it. "I don't understand," Elena said, her voice growing stronger as confusion gave way to anger. "This is kidnapping. You can't just keep me here against my will. I have a job, responsibilities, people who will be looking for me." Vincent moved to the window and gazed out at what appeared to be extensive grounds. From her position, Elena could see manicured gardens, a fountain, and high walls topped with what looked like security cameras. This wasn't just a house, it was a fortress. Your old life ended last night, Vincent said without turning around. Your job at the coffee shop, your tiny apartment, your mountain of student loans, all of that is behind you now? Elena's blood ran cold. How did he know so much about her life? Had he been watching her? You're insane if you think I'm going to stay here, Elena said, surprised by the defiance in her own voice. She moved toward the door, but Vincent's voice stopped her. I wouldn't recommend leaving this room without my permission, he said, finally turning to face her. His gray eyes had turned cold as winter steel. My security team has strict instructions about unauthorized movement in this house. Elena's hand froze on the door handle. Security team? The reality of her situation was beginning to sink in. This wasn't just some rich man's twisted fantasy. This was organized, planned, and completely beyond her ability to handle alone. Vincent walked over to the mahogany dresser and picked up his watch, fastening it around his wrist with practiced ease. Breakfast will be served in an hour. Maria will bring you appropriate clothing. He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. One more thing, Elena, he said, his voice carrying an authority that made her entire body tense. The way he looked at her in that moment made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into something she could never escape. From today on, you're mine. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Elena stood frozen as Vincent left the room, the soft click of the lock engaging behind him confirming what she already knew. She was trapped, and her life as she knew it was over. Elena spent the next hour pacing the marble floors like a caged animal, her mind racing through possible escape plans. Each idea seemed more impossible than the last. The windows were too high to jump from without serious injury, and she had already confirmed they were locked from the outside. The door remained firmly secured no matter how hard she pulled or pushed. A soft knock interrupted her frantic thoughts. "Miss Elena?" came a gentle voice from the other side of the door. "I'm Maria. Mr. Moretti sent me to help you prepare for breakfast." Elena pressed her ear against the door. The voice belonged to an older woman with a slight accent she couldn't place. "I don't want breakfast," Elena called back. "I want to go home." There was a pause, then the sound of a key turning in the lock. Maria entered carrying an armful of clothing and wearing an expression of sympathetic understanding. She was perhaps 60 years old, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind brown eyes that reminded Elena of her grandmother. "I know this is frightening, dear," Maria said softly, setting the clothes on the bed. "But fighting Mr. Moretti will only make things harder for you. Trust me on this." Elena stared at the woman in disbelief. "You're helping him keep me prisoner and you want me to trust you? How can you be part of this?" Maria's face showed genuine sadness. "I've worked for the Moretti family for 30 years. I've seen what happens to those who try to run." She gestured toward the clothes. "These will fit you better than that nightgown. Mr. Moretti doesn't like to be kept waiting." The clothes were beautiful and obviously expensive, a flowing cream-colored dress with delicate embroidery, matching shoes that looked like they cost more than Elena's car, and undergarments made from the finest silk. Everything was exactly her size, which sent another chill through her body. How long had Vincent been planning this? "How does he know my measurements?" Elena asked, holding up the dress. Maria busied herself with arranging items on the dresser. "Mr. Moretti is very thorough in his planning. He's been watching you for months, learning your routines, your preferences, your size." The casual way she said it made Elena feel sick. Months? Elena's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "Why? What could he possibly want with me?" "That's not for me to say," Maria replied, though her expression suggested she knew more than she was willing to share. "But I will tell you this, Mr. Moretti is not a cruel man unless he's crossed. Follow his rules and you'll be treated well." Elena wanted to scream that no treatment could justify kidnapping, but something in Maria's tone suggested she was trying to help in the only way she could. "What are his rules?" Elena asked reluctantly. Maria moved to the window and adjusted the curtains, speaking without looking at Elena. "No leaving your designated areas without permission. No contact with the outside world. No violence toward staff or Mr. Moretti, and most importantly, no escape attempts. She turned back to Elena with worried eyes. The last woman who tried to run. Well, let's just say Mr. Moretti was very disappointed. There was another woman? Elena's blood ran cold. What had happened to her? Get dressed, Maria said, clearly ending the conversation. I'll wait outside and escort you to the dining room. Elena had no choice but to put on the clothes. They fit perfectly, which somehow made everything feel more real and terrifying. When she emerged from the bedroom, Maria was waiting in a hallway that looked like something from a palace. Paintings that probably belonged in museums lined the walls, and the carpet beneath their feet was so thick, Elena's shoes barely made a sound. They walked in silence through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. Elena tried to memorize the route, noting doorways and windows, but the house was a maze of interconnected rooms and passages. Finally, they arrived at a dining room dominated by a table that could easily seat 20 people. Vincent sat at the head of the table, looking perfectly at ease as he read what appeared to be financial reports. He had changed into casual clothes, dark jeans, and a button-down shirt that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. When he looked up and saw Elena, his gray eyes traveled over her appearance with obvious approval. Much better, he said, gesturing to the chair to his right. Please sit. Elena remained standing. I'm not hungry. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around them. I said sit, Elena. The quiet authority in his voice made her legs move before her brain could protest. She found herself seated beside him, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. The table was set with fine china and crystal glasses. Fresh fruit, pastries, and what looked like eggs Benedict were arranged on silver platters. It was the kind of breakfast Elena had only seen in movies about rich people. Her stomach growled despite her determination not to eat. You must have questions, Vincent said, serving himself coffee from an ornate pot. I'm willing to answer some of them. Elena's mind raced with 1,000 questions, but one rose above the others. Why me? I'm nobody special. I work in a coffee shop and can barely pay my rent. What could you possibly want with me? Vincent smiled that predatory smile again. You underestimate yourself, Elena. You have something very valuable that belongs to me. I don't have anything valuable, Elena protested. I drive a 10-year-old car and my bank account has maybe $300 in it. Not money, Vincent said, cutting into his eggs with surgical precision. Something much more precious. He looked directly at her, his gaze so intense she felt like he could see into her soul. Your father owes me a considerable debt. Elena's fork clattered against her plate. My father? My father died when I was 5. You have the wrong person? Michael Torres, Vincent said calmly. Born in Chicago. Moved to Los Angeles in 1995. Worked for my family until his untimely death in a car accident. The way he emphasized accident made Elena's blood freeze. My father's name was Michael. But his last name was Santos, not Torres, Elena said desperately. And he worked construction, not for some crime family. Vincent reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph, sliding it across the table. Elena's hands shook as she picked it up. It was her father, but he looked different, younger. Wearing an expensive suit, standing next to a man who looked remarkably like Vincent. Your father changed his name and moved across the country to protect you, Vincent explained. But debts don't disappear just because someone dies. They get passed down to the next generation. Elena stared at the photograph, her entire understanding of her life crumbling around her. The man in the picture was definitely her father, but this wasn't the construction worker who had read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bicycle. This was a stranger in an expensive suit who apparently worked for criminals. What kind of debt? She whispered. Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying her reaction. Your father was supposed to deliver something very important to me. When he died, that item disappeared. I've spent 20 years looking for it, and I finally realized the answer was right in front of me. I don't know anything about any item, Elena said frantically. My father left me nothing but medical bills and a few old photos. Perhaps, Vincent said. But you're going to help me find it anyway. Consider yourself collateral until the debt is paid. Elena felt the walls of her new prison closing in around her. She wasn't just a kidnapping victim. She was payment for a 20-year-old debt she didn't even know existed. Her father's hidden past had finally caught up with her, and there was nowhere left to run. Elena spent the rest of the morning locked in what Vincent called the library, a room filled with books from floor to ceiling that would have been her dream space under any other circumstances. But even surrounded by thousands of volumes, she felt more trapped than ever. Her mind kept returning to the photograph of her father, trying to reconcile the man in the expensive suit with the gentle construction worker she remembered. Around noon, Vincent appeared in the doorway carrying a manila folder thick with documents. He had changed back into a business suit, and his expression was all business. "We need to talk," he said. Settling into the leather chair across from her, Elena looked up from the book she had been pretending to read. "I already told you I don't know anything about whatever my father supposedly took." "Supposedly?" Vincent's eyebrows rose. "Your father stole something very valuable from my family. A list of names, bank accounts, and locations that could destroy everything we've built over 3 generations. He opened the folder and pulled out several photographs. Spreading them across the coffee table between them, the photos showed her father at various ages. Always in expensive clothing, always with men who looked dangerous. In one image, he was shaking hands with an older man who resembled Vincent so strongly it had to be his father. In another, he was climbing into a luxury car with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. "Michael Torres was one of my father's most trusted men," Vincent continued. "He handled sensitive information, moved money, eliminated problems. When he decided to leave the family business, he took an insurance policy with him." Elena studied the photos, her stomach churning. This couldn't be the same man who had bandaged her scraped knees and helped with her homework. Why should I believe any of this? These could be fake. Vincent pulled out another document, a birth certificate with her father's real name and a death certificate that listed cause of death as mechanical. Failure, suspicious circumstances under investigation. The date was exactly 20 years ago. Just as Elena remembered. "Your father's car didn't just crash," Vincent said quietly. "Someone cut his brake lines. My father always suspected it was a rival family trying to get the information he carried. But now I think Michael saw it coming and hid the files before they could kill him." Elena's hands shook as she read the documents. Her entire childhood had been built on lies. Her mother had told her that her father died in a random accident, that he was just a hard-working man who got unlucky. But the evidence in front of her painted a very different picture. "Even if this is all true," Elena said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "I was 5 years old when he died. How would I know where he hid anything?" Vincent leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "Children notice things adults miss. You might have seen him with the files, heard him talking on the phone, remembered a place he took you that seemed important." He pulled out a notebook and pen. "I want you to tell me everything you remember about the months before his death." Elena wanted to refuse, to tell him she wouldn't help him with whatever criminal enterprise he was running. But the way he looked at her made it clear this wasn't a request. "I don't remember much," she said reluctantly. "I was just a kid." "Start with where you lived," Vincent said, pen poised over the notebook. Elena closed her eyes, trying to bring back memories she had buried for 20 years. "We had a small house in East LA. My mom worked double shifts at the hospital, so it was usually just me and my dad in the evenings." The memories came slowly, like photographs developing in a darkroom. "What did you do together?" "Normal father-daughter things," I thought. "We went to the park, got ice cream, watched movies." Elena paused, something nagging at the edge of her memory. "But there were places he took me that seemed strange for a construction worker. Nice restaurants, a yacht club, an art gallery downtown." Vincent's pen moved quickly across the paper. "What about the house? Did he have an office or a special room where he kept important things?" Elena thought hard. "He had a workshop in the garage, but my mom said I wasn't allowed in there. She told me it was dangerous because of his power tools." A chill ran down her spine as she realized those power tools might not have been the real danger. "Did you ever go in anyway?" Vincent asked, watching her face carefully. Elena hesitated. She had gone into the garage once when her parents were fighting and she wanted to hide. The memory came rushing back. Her father hunched over a workbench, not building anything but instead writing in a leather notebook. He had hidden it quickly when he saw her, telling her it was a surprise for her mother's birthday. "Once," she admitted, "I saw him writing in a leather book. He said it was for my mom's birthday, but her birthday wasn't for months." Vincent set down his pen and leaned back. "What happened to your father's things after he died?" "My mom packed everything up. She said it was too painful to keep his belongings around." Elena's voice grew quiet. "We moved to a smaller apartment and she threw away most of his stuff. I remember being angry because she got rid of his tools without asking if I wanted to keep anything." "Did she throw everything away?" Elena shook her head slowly. "She kept a few things in a storage unit. Photo albums, some papers, maybe a box of personal items. But I haven't been there in years. I'm not even sure if my mom still pays for it." Vincent's eyes lit up with interest. "Where is this storage unit?" Elena realized she might have just given him exactly what he was looking for. "I'm not telling you that," she said firmly. "If there really is something there, it belongs to my family, not to you." Vincent stood up, straightening his suit jacket. "Everything your father owned was purchased with Moretti money. That makes it mine by right." He gathered the documents and photos back into the folder. "You'll take me to this storage unit, Elena. The only question is whether you do it willingly or not. And if I refuse?" Vincent walked to the window and gazed out at the extensive grounds. "Your friend Maya is very pretty," he said casually. "She works at the flower shop on Sunset Boulevard, drives a blue Honda Civic, lives alone in apartment 4B on Morrison Street." He turned back to Elena, his expression calm but threatening. "It would be unfortunate if something happened to her because of your stubbornness." Elena's blood turned to ice. "You leave Maya out of this. She has nothing to do with whatever happened between you and my father." "Neither did you originally," Vincent pointed out. "But here we are." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I'm a patient man, Elena, but my patience isn't infinite. You have until tomorrow morning to decide whether you want to help me find that storage unit. After that, I start making phone calls." Elena sat alone in the library long after he left, her mind racing through impossible choices. She could lead Vincent to the storage unit and potentially help him find whatever criminal information her father had hidden. Or she could refuse and put Maya in danger. Either way, she was trapped in a situation created by secrets that had been buried for 20 years. As the sun began to set through the library windows, Elena realized that her father's past had finally caught up with her in the worst possible way. The gentle man who had read her bedtime stories had left behind a legacy of violence and secrets that now threatened to destroy everything she cared about. She had to find a way to protect Maya while figuring out what her father had really hidden away. But first, she needed to understand exactly who Michael Torres had been and why his stolen secrets were worth killing for. Elena barely slept that night, her mind consumed with worry about Maya and the impossible choice Vincent had forced upon her. When morning came, she found herself dressed in designer clothes that Maria had laid out: dark jeans, a silk blouse, and leather jacket that probably cost more than Elena's monthly salary. Everything fit perfectly, a constant reminder of how thoroughly Vincent had planned her captivity. Vincent was waiting for her in the foyer, looking immaculate in a charcoal gray suit. Two men in expensive black clothing flanked him, obviously bodyguards, who carried themselves with the easy confidence of people comfortable with violence. Elena's stomach twisted as she realized this was really happening. "Good morning, Elena," Vincent said, checking his expensive watch. "I trust you've made your decision?" Elena lifted her chin, trying to project more confidence than she felt. "I'll take you to the storage unit, but I want proof that Maya is safe first." Vincent smiled and pulled out his phone, showing her a photo taken just minutes earlier. Maya was unlocking the flower shop, completely unaware that dangerous men were watching her every move. She's perfectly safe, as long as you cooperate, he said. Sliding the phone back into his pocket, the drive to the storage facility took nearly an hour through Los Angeles traffic. Elena sat in the back of a black SUV with tinted windows, Vincent beside her while his men rode in front. She tried to memorize the route, looking for landmarks that might help her later, but Vincent seemed to read her thoughts. "Don't even think about trying to escape during this little expedition," he said quietly. "My men have eyes on Maya, and one phone call from me could change her day dramatically." Elena stared out the window at the familiar neighborhoods of her childhood. Everything looking different now that she knew the truth about her father. They passed the park where he used to push her on swings, the ice cream shop where he bought her strawberry cones, the elementary school where he walked her to class. Had he been planning his betrayal of the Moretti family even then? The storage facility was exactly as Elena remembered, a sprawling complex of orange, metal buildings surrounded by chain-link fence. She hadn't been here since her mother's funeral 3 years ago, when Elena had finally worked up the courage to go through her parents' remaining possessions. "Unit number?" Vincent asked as they pulled through the entrance gate. 217, Elena replied reluctantly. Each word felt like a betrayal of her father's memory. But Maya's safety was more important than protecting secrets. She didn't even understand. They walked through rows of identical storage units until they found the right number. Elena's hands shook as she entered the code her mother had given her years ago, half hoping it had been changed. But the lock clicked open, and Vincent's satisfied smile told her there was no going back now. The unit was exactly as Elena remembered, a 10-by-10 space crammed with boxes, furniture, and memories. Her father's old recliner sat covered in dust sheets, and cardboard boxes labeled in her mother's careful handwriting were stacked against the walls. Vincent's men immediately began pulling boxes out into the light, searching for anything that might contain the information he was looking for. "These are just photo albums and old clothes," Elena said, watching them rifle through her family's possessions. "I told you I don't think there's anything important here." Vincent ignored her protests, methodically opening each box himself. He found her father's old tools, some financial documents from before his death, and several photo albums filled with pictures of Elena as a child. But nothing that looked like the criminal records he was seeking. After an hour of searching, Vincent's frustration was obvious. "There has to be something here," he muttered, pulling apart boxes they had already searched. "Your father wouldn't have just disappeared those files." Elena watched him tear through her family's belongings with growing anger. These weren't just random objects. They were the last physical connections she had to her parents. "Maybe he destroyed whatever it was," she said. "Maybe he realized how dangerous it was and got rid of it to protect us." "No," Vincent said firmly. "Michael was too smart for that. He knew those files were his life insurance policy. He hid them somewhere safe." He turned to Elena with sharp eyes. "Think harder. Where else might he have kept something important?" Elena was about to say she had no idea when one of Vincent's men called out from behind the recliner. "Boss, there's something here." They all gathered around as the man pulled out a metal lockbox that had been hidden beneath the chair's frame. It was small but heavy, clearly designed to protect important documents. Vincent took it carefully, examining the combination lock. "Do you know the combination?" he asked Elena. Elena shook her head, but something made her reach for the box. As soon as her fingers touched the metal, a memory flashed through her mind, her father teaching her to remember important numbers by using family birthdays. Her birthday was May 5th, 1999. Her mother's was December 8th, 1975. "Try May 5th, 99, Elena said quietly. The numbers feeling familiar on her tongue, Vincent entered the combination and the lock clicked open. Inside were several items that made Elena's breath catch: her father's real passport with the name Michael Torres, a thick manila envelope sealed with wax, and a letter addressed to Elena in her father's handwriting. Vincent reached for the sealed envelope, but Elena grabbed his wrist. "The letter is mine," she said firmly. "If you want my cooperation, I read it first." For a moment, tension crackled between them. Vincent's men moved closer, hands moving toward weapons concealed under their jackets. but Vincent held up a hand to stop them. "Read it quickly," he said. Handing Elena the letter, Elena's hands trembled as she opened the envelope that had been sealed for 20 years. Her father's familiar handwriting filled several pages, and tears blurred her vision as she began to read. "My dearest Elena," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then Vincent Moretti has found you, and I'm sorry for the danger my choices have brought to your life. I want you to know that everything I did was to protect you and your mother from a world that would have destroyed your innocence." The letter went on to explain her father's work for the Moretti family, his growing discomfort with their methods, and his decision to take evidence of their crimes as insurance against retaliation when he left. But the most shocking revelation came in the final paragraphs. "The information Vincent seeks is not in that manila envelope," her father had written. "What's inside will only lead him on another chase. The real files are hidden somewhere only you could find them, somewhere that meant something special to just the two of us. Look for the place where we fed the ducks and made wishes on fountain coins. The truth is buried where our happy memories live." Elena looked up from the letter to find Vincent watching her intently. "Well?" he demanded. "What does it say?" Elena folded the letter carefully, her mind racing. Her father had been one step ahead even 20 years later. The real evidence wasn't here. It was hidden somewhere else, somewhere that apparently only she would be able to find. She had a choice to make that would determine not just her own fate, but possibly Vincent's and Maya's as well. "He says the files you want are in here," Elena lied, gesturing toward the manila envelope. "But he warns that they're dangerous for everyone involved." Vincent's eyes lit up as he reached for the envelope. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that her father's real message was much more complicated than either of them realized. The game was far from over. Vincent tore open the manila envelope with eager hands, but his expression quickly changed from anticipation to fury. Inside were bank statements from 20 years ago, some old business correspondence, and a single photograph of Elena as a child feeding ducks at a pond. But there were no criminal records, no damaging information about the Moretti family operations. "This is nothing," Vincent snarled, throwing the papers to the ground. "These are just random documents your father kept as mementos." His gray eyes turned to Elena with dangerous intensity. "You're holding something back?" Elena tried to keep her expression neutral, but her heart was pounding. The photograph of her feeding ducks was clearly a message from her father, connected to the clue in his letter about the place where we fed the ducks and made wishes on fountain coins. She needed to figure out what it meant without Vincent realizing she was still hiding something. Maybe he moved the real files, Elena suggested carefully. Maybe he realized the storage unit wasn't safe enough. Vincent studied her face for a long moment, and Elena forced herself to meet his gaze without flinching. Finally, he gestured to his men. "Pack up everything. We're taking it all back to the house." He leaned closer to Elena, his voice low and threatening. "If you're lying to me, Maya will pay the price." The drive back to Vincent's mansion was tense and silent. Elena clutched her father's letter in her pocket, reading and rereading the crucial passage in her mind. The place where they fed ducks and made wishes on fountain coins. She remembered several parks where her father had taken her to feed ducks, but only one had a fountain where they used to throw pennies and make wishes, Griffith Park, specifically. The small pond near the observatory where her father used to take her on Sunday afternoons. He would bring stale bread for the ducks and give her coins to throw in the fountain while making a wish. Elena had always wished for a pony or a new bicycle, but now she wondered what her father had been wishing for, back at the mansion. Vincent locked Elena in the library while he examined her father's belongings more thoroughly. Elena used the time to think about the clue. If her father had hidden something at Griffith Park, it would have to be somewhere protected from weather and discovery. The park was huge and heavily used. Anything buried in the open would have been found years ago, but there was one place that made sense. Near the duck pond was an old stone bridge that crossed a small creek. As a child, Elena had loved to look at the intricate stonework underneath the bridge. Her father had told her stories about the craftsmen who built it, pointing out small details that most people never noticed. If he had wanted to hide something where only Elena would think to look, that bridge would be perfect. When Vincent returned to the library that evening, Elena could see the frustration written across his face. "Your father's belongings told me nothing new," he said, settling into the leather chair across from her. "But I'm not giving up. Tomorrow we're going to retrace his steps, visit every place he might have gone in those final months." Elena saw her opportunity. "Actually, I've been thinking about something," she said carefully. "There's a park we used to visit together. Griffith Park, near the observatory. He took me there almost every weekend to feed the ducks. If he wanted to hide something sentimental, somewhere that meant something to our family, that might be the place." Vincent's eyes sharpened with interest. "What makes you think that?" Elena pulled out the photograph that had been in the envelope. "This picture was taken there. I recognized the pond and that stone bridge in the background. And look at the date stamp. It was taken just 2 weeks before he died." Vincent studied the photograph carefully. "It could be a coincidence. Or it could be his way of leaving me a clue," Elena said. "You said yourself that he was smart. If he wanted to hide something where only I would find it, that park holds some of our best memories together." Vincent was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing the possibility. "If you're trying to trick me into taking you somewhere public where you can escape or call for help, you should know that's impossible. My men will be watching your every move." "I know," Elena said, "but I want to find the truth as much as you do. My father kept secrets from me my entire life. If there really are answers hidden somewhere, I need to know what they are." This was partially true. Elena did want to understand her father's hidden life, but more importantly, she was desperate to protect Mia. If she could lead Vincent to whatever her father had hidden, maybe he would let both of them go the next morning. Elena found herself back in the black SUV with Vincent and his security team. Heading toward Griffith Park, the familiar landmarks of her childhood looked different through the tinted windows. Filtered through the knowledge of her father's criminal past, the park was busy with joggers, dog walkers, and families enjoying the morning sunshine. Elena's heart raced as she realized how many innocent people were nearby. If Vincent's men were armed, any confrontation could endanger dozens of bystanders. They parked near the observatory and walked toward the duck pond. Elena's childhood memories flooded back, her father lifting her up to see over the fence, helping her tear bread into small pieces for the ducks, counting coins before throwing them into the fountain. It all seemed so innocent now, but she wondered what dangerous thoughts had been running through his mind during those peaceful afternoons. "There's the bridge," Elena said, pointing toward the stone structure that crossed the narrow creek feeding the pond. "My father used to tell me stories about the people who built it. He knew all kinds of details about the stonework." Vincent surveyed the area carefully. "Too public," he said. "If he hid something here, it would have to be somewhere that wouldn't be disturbed by park maintenance or curious visitors." Elena led them closer to the bridge, her heart pounding as she tried to remember her father's stories. He had pointed out how some of the stones had small marks carved by the original craftsmen, signatures hidden where most people would never look. And there was one spot in particular ... "Under here," Elena said, pointing to a section of stonework beneath the bridge where the creek curved. "My father showed me these marks once. He said they were messages left by the workers who built the bridge." Vincent's men immediately began examining the stones, looking for any sign of disturbance or hidden compartments. Elena held her breath, praying that her childhood memory was accurate and that her father had really hidden something here. After several tense minutes, one of the men called out, "Boss, there's something here. Looks like one of these stones has been removed and replaced." Elena's pulse raced as they carefully worked the stone free from its setting. Behind it was a small waterproof container, exactly the kind used to protect important documents from the elements. Vincent's hands were steady as he opened the container, but Elena could see the anticipation in his eyes. Inside was a single key and another letter from her father. But this time, the letter was addressed to Vincent Moretti. Vincent held the letter addressed to him with hands that weren't quite steady. Elena could see the tension in his shoulders as he unfolded the paper, knowing that whatever was written there would change everything. Around them, families continued to enjoy their morning at the park, completely unaware of the dangerous drama unfolding beneath the stone bridge. "Read it out loud," Elena demanded, surprising herself with her boldness. "If this involves my family, I have a right to know what it says." Vincent glanced at his security team, then back at Elena. After a moment's hesitation, he began to read her father's words aloud. "Vincent, if you're reading this, then you've forced my daughter to help you find what you're looking for. I'm sorry for that. She doesn't deserve to pay for my choices. But perhaps it's time you learned the truth about why I really left your family's business." Vincent's voice grew tighter as he continued. "The information you've been seeking doesn't exist. I never stole any files or records from your father's operations. What I took was something much more valuable, evidence of your father's plan to eliminate your older brother Marco and frame it as a rival family's attack." Elena's breath caught in her throat. Vincent had stopped reading, his face pale with shock. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Marco died in a car bombing meant for my father. It was the Castellano family. We went to war over it." But Elena could see doubt creeping into Vincent's eyes as he continued reading silently. His hands began to tremble, and when he looked up, his expression had changed completely. The confident, dangerous man who had kidnapped her was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and broken. "What does it say?" Elena asked softly. Vincent's voice was hollow as he continued reading. "Your brother discovered that your father was embezzling money from family operations and planned to expose him to the other bosses. So your father arranged Marco's death and used it to start a war that would distract everyone from his financial crimes. I couldn't be part of that betrayal of family, so I gathered evidence and left." Elena felt sick as the full scope of her father's knowledge became clear. He hadn't just been a criminal, he had been witness to fratricide within the most dangerous family in the city. No wonder he had run and changed his identity. Vincent was still reading, his voice growing stronger but more dangerous. "The evidence is hidden in safety deposit box 247 at First National Bank downtown. The key you found will open it." "But, Vincent, ask yourself this. Do you really want to know the truth about the man you've spent your life trying to honor?" Silence stretched between them for several minutes. Vincent stared at the key in his palm as if it were a poisonous snake. Around them, children laughed and played while Elena waited to see what this revelation would do to the man who held her life in his hands. Finally, Vincent folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket along with the key. "We're going to the bank," he said quietly, "all of us." The drive downtown was even more tense than their previous trips. Vincent sat rigid in his seat, staring out the window while his men exchanged worried glances. Elena could practically feel the dangerous energy radiating from him as he processed what he had learned about his family's history. First National Bank was an imposing building in the heart of the financial district. Vincent walked through the marble lobby like a man going to his own execution, Elena and his security team flanking him. When they reached the safety deposit box area, Vincent showed identification and signed papers with mechanical precision. Box 247 was larger than Elena had expected. When Vincent opened it with the key from Griffith Park, they found several items that made him physically step backward. There were photographs of his brother Marco, documents showing financial discrepancies in his father's accounts, and a recording device that looked ancient by today's standards. Vincent picked up the recorder with shaking hands. "This is from 20 years ago," he said, more to himself than to Elena. "My father always recorded important conversations for security." When he pressed play, Elena heard voices she didn't recognize, but Vincent clearly did. His face grew paler with each word as the recording revealed the cold-blooded planning of his brother's murder, orchestrated by their own father to cover up his theft from the family. "That's enough," Vincent said suddenly, stopping the recording mid-sentence. He stood there for several minutes, gripping the edge of the safe deposit box, so hard his knuckles were white. Elena watched him struggle with 20 years of carefully constructed beliefs crumbling around him. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know what it's like to find out your father wasn't who you thought he was." Vincent laughed bitterly. "Your father was trying to protect you from the truth. Mine murdered his own son and let me believe it was an enemy family. He turned to Elena with eyes full of pain and rage. Do you know what I did to the Castellanos? The war we fought? The innocent people who died because I believed my father's lies? Elena realized they had reached a crucial moment. Vincent's entire worldview had just been destroyed, and she had no idea how he would react. He could become even more dangerous, or this revelation might finally set her free. What happens now? Elena asked carefully. Vincent began packing the evidence back into the safety deposit box, his movements sharp and angry. Now I have some family business to take care of. He looked at her directly for the first time since reading her father's letter. Your father's debt is paid, Elena. He saved my life by keeping me from becoming like the man who killed my brother. Elena's heart jumped with hope. Does that mean I can go home? Not yet, Vincent said, but his tone was different now, less threatening and more protective. My father has been running the family for 20 years based on the lie that he was avenging Marco's death. When I confront him with this evidence, there's going to be a war within our organization. You're not safe until that's resolved. Elena understood the implication. She had become witness to family secrets that could get her killed if the wrong people learned what she knew. Her freedom would have to wait until Vincent dealt with the consequences of his father's crimes, but for the first time since waking up in his mansion, Elena felt like she might actually survive this nightmare. The truth about her father's past had finally set them both free from the lies that had shaped their lives. The question now was whether they would both live long enough to enjoy that freedom.